Look at me, Alcinous. Your people laugh. Their bellies are full of honey and their souls are light as sea foam. They have never seen iron enter flesh during sleep. Do you see a king, a hero? Look closer. The light of your torches trembles against my face. Those aren't wrinkles. They are scars from the breath of a god. The wine in my cup, it is too clean. I taste rust and salt in it. My name is Odysseus, son of Laertes, a curse to some, a legend to others. But for those rotting on the seafloor because of my pride, I am simply a murderer who survived. Listen, if you have the stomach for the truth, and not just the songs. Part 1. The Taste of Plunder. Troy was burning. The ash of a great city still settled in our lungs, mingling with the taste of gall and cheap victory. We felt no relief, only a void. We were dogs whose bone had been snatched away, killers whose blades had rusted without fresh blood. 12 ships, 1,000 shadows searching for a place to sink their steel. Ismarus, the city of the Secunes. It slept, relaxed and defenseless. We tore into it at the gray of dawn, while the mist still licked the doorsteps, the stickiness of cold blood on my hands. I watched my men turn into beasts. Doors were ripped from hinges. Men died before they could open their eyes. Women became spoils. We took everything: gold, silver, livestock. I stood in the square and watched my warriors divide the women, watched them smear themselves with the fat of slaughtered sheep. I felt it. The silence beyond the city walls grew too heavy. I ordered them to move, now, to the ships. But my heroes, they laughed in my face, drunk not so much on wine as on impunity. They slaughtered cattle right on the shore, built bonfires, and drank the dark poison of the Cicones. And I made my first, my worst mistake. I allowed it. I wanted to remain one of them. A captain's weakness is a death sentence for his crew. Dawn didn't come with the sun. It came with the thud of 1,000 feet. The earth groaned. The Cicones didn't come for gold. They came for our guts. Chaos. The line shattered faster than we could raise our shields. The surf grew thick, red, and warm with our blood. Men who were roaring with laughter yesterday were now trying to hold their own entrails as they spilled onto the sand. 72 of my brothers. 72 voices that now ring in my head every night. They stayed there, rotting under the sun of Ismarus because their captain wanted to be a friend rather than a tyrant. Part 2. The Sweet Poison of Peace. Zeus does not forgive mistakes. He tore the sky above us like a wet rag. For 9 days the sea tried to pound the souls out of us. The ships groaned. We bailed water along with our own hope. On the 10th day, a sudden, ominous silence. The land of the lotus eaters. The air there was like molasses. Heavy, sickly. It smelled of the cloying, sweet breath of a divine corpse. I sent 3 men. I looked for swords. I found flowers. They didn't return. When I went after them, I saw something that terrified me more than Troy. My men sat in the dust alongside local shadows. The lotus eaters weren't monsters. They were empty jars. In their hands, pale lotus petals. My warriors, the same men who had walked through hell, were now chewing this blossom. Gray paste on their teeth, eyes like glass marbles with nothing inside, only the void. No longing, no pain, no memory. They forgot Ithaca, forgot the names of their wives, forgot the faces of their fathers. 10 years of slaughter, every scar, every loss, all dissolved in honeyed spit in a single hour. They didn't want to leave. They wanted to sit in that sweet rot and watch eternity pass. I felt disgust, a cold, oily disgust for their hollow eyes. I beat them. I dragged them by their hair over jagged rocks, leaving strips of their skin on the sand. They screamed as if I were leading them to the gallows rather than to life. I bound them under the rowing benches like cattle. The lotus is not food. It is rust that eats the steel of human will. My second failure was that I almost allowed myself to envy them. For a moment, I too wanted to forget. Forget the blood of Ismarus. Forget the screams of Troy. But I survived, and that is my punishment. We sailed away, and beneath the benches wailed men who no longer knew who they were. I saved their bodies, but their souls remained there forever, in the honeyed mist. Part 3. A Harbor for the Dead. Mist licked the hulls of the ships like a dead man's tongue. We found this scrap of land by touch, a ghost island lying across from the country of the Cyclops, screened from them by a veil of damp gray. It was paradise, but in my world, paradise is only a breather before the butchery. There were no people, only goats, thousands of wild goats with eyes like yellow slits. We slaughtered them for 3 days, blood drained into the sand, mixing with the salt froth of the surf. Fresh meat, clean water, safety. We had everything we needed just to live, just to breathe. But I looked across the strait, to where a column of smoke rose over the shore of the giants. Greasy, black smoke. It smelled of someone else's life, and that smell began to eat my mind. My men warmed themselves by the fires, gorging until they were sick. They were happy in their insignificance. But I felt a dark intoxication with my own greatness. It hissed in my blood, denying me peace. Satiety was not enough. I needed a challenge. I wanted to look a monster in the eye and force him to acknowledge my stature. What irony! A man who seeks validation from a beast becomes part of the beast himself. Part 4. The Vault of My Pride. I chose 12. The best, the brave, the doomed. I took a skin of wine from Marin. It was thick as Venus blood and smelled so sharp and sweet that the air around it grew heavy. This wine was my fear wrapped in leather. We crossed the water. The shore of the Cyclops met us with a silence that made the ears ring. We found it. The cave. It wasn't a home. It was a cathedral of savagery. The stench of sheep urine, the smell of soured milk, and the heavy putrid musk of an unwashed, colossal body. In the corners, massive baskets woven from entire trees, full of cheese, white and cold as the flesh of a drowned man. Pails of whey glinted in the half-light like the eyes of the dead. "Let's take the cheese and go," my men pleaded. I saw their hands trembling. They felt what I refused to admit. We didn't belong here. We were insects in a bird's nest. "Let's take the lambs, Captain, fast, before the master returns." But I stood in the center of that stench as if on a throne. I wanted gifts. I wanted hospitality. I invented rules for a game in a place where the laws of the gods had never been heard. I waited for the master as if he were meant to bow to my name. It wasn't curiosity. It was unquenchable vanity, driving me to seek glory even in a predator's den. I wanted this vault, filled with cheese and dung, to shudder at the sound of my name. I heard the water dripping from the ceiling, each drop like a final heartbeat lost in the cold dark of the cave. And I didn't move. I bought myself a crumb of triumph at the cost of their blood. We stayed. We waited. And the darkness began to breathe down our necks. Part 5. In the Jaws of Stone. The earth didn't just shake, it groaned. Then came the sound I hear every night when I close my eyes. The hollow, final thud of the stone slab. 20 teams of horses couldn't have moved that bolt. We became rats in our own trap. The light vanished. What remained was the stench, a thick, cloying smell of unwashed giant sheep piss and old, curdled cheese. He didn't waste words on us, the small things. His hand, an oak root covered in coarse hair, snapped into the dark. A jerk. The screams of my men were cut short by a brief, dry crunch. Do you know what a skull sounds like when it shatters against a rock? Like a ripe watermelon dropped on a pavement. He ate them alive, slowly. I heard him chewing, heard the vertebrae snapping under his teeth. Brains splattered across my face, warm, salty, not mine. The wine of their lives spilled across the cave floor, but no one raised a cup. Polyphemus wiped his mouth with his forearm and washed down the flesh with milk that foamed on his beard like the surf after a storm. I gripped the hilt of my sword. Rage blinded me. Blood hammered in my temples. Kill him! Sink the iron into his liver! I could already see where his life pulsed, but a cold, poisonous intellect held me by the throat. If he dies now, this stone becomes our headstone. We will rot beside him, choking on the stench of his corpse. A night of despair, every moment like a hammer blow. We sat in the corner, pressed into the dung, listening to the giant snore. His sleep was heavy and foul, like our very future. That was my first night in the hell I had built with my own hands. Part 6. The Eye of Night. Morning brought no sun, only the sound of the slab sliding and light that struck the eyes like a physical blow. Polyphemus didn't forget breakfast. Two more. Two more of my brothers, whose names I had already begun to strike from my memory, so as not to go mad. He devoured them casually, the way we eat bread, and sealed us in the vault again. My brain turned into white-hot iron. I saw his staff, a massive trunk of olive wood, still green, oozing sticky sap. To him, a toy. To us, the mast of a ship that would never see the sea. "Whittle," I croaked. We sharpened the end, made it as keen as greed. I held it over the fire myself until the wood began to char, turning hard and mean. We hid it in the sheep dung, the only place our hope smelled. Evening, the return. Two more dead. The sixth murder on my account because I was the one who led them here. I stepped into the light of the crimson bonfire with Marin's bowl of wine. "Drink, monster. Taste what we serve men in my homeland." He drank, one bowl, a second, a third. The giant's eyes clouded, his gaze grew heavy and stupid. Marin's wine was too potent for his wild blood. "What is your name, you nothing?" he roared, vomiting chunks of human flesh. "I will give you a gift. My name is Nobody." He laughed so hard that dust fell from the ceiling. "My gift. I will eat you last, Nobody." He collapsed. The monster's sleep was filthy. He retched wine and human remains, drowning in his own filth. We moved. 4 held the stake, and I steered it straight into the center of his single eye. We threw our entire weight into it. Do you hear it? The hiss, like a red-hot horseshoe in cold water. The white of the eye boiled, the eyelid charred. The stench of scorched meat filled the cave. Polyphemus let out a scream that should have split the island in two. He tore out the bloody stake, and thick, dark blood sprayed our faces. The other Cyclops came running. They stood outside the rock asking who was hurting him. "Nobody," he wailed. "Nobody is killing me by treachery." They left. Of course they left. Language became my weapon. A lie saved our skins. I laughed in my soul, wiping blood from my eyes. I had defeated a monster with my mind. But that was when I made my most terrible mistake. I believed I was cleverer than fate itself. I didn't yet know that every cunning step was only driving me deeper into the maw of the sea god. Part 7. Wool and Fear. Dawn was gray, like the ash on our faces. Polyphemus didn't just move the stone. He stood in the doorway, his limbs spread like a spider in the center of a web. His fingers, bloody and tacky, twitched convulsively. He waited. He wanted to feel our flesh under his hands. He wanted to rip the skin off anyone who dared to slip past him. I looked at my men. They weren't warriors. They were livestock, a terrified, trembling flock waiting for the knife. So I made them livestock literally. We lashed the rams in threes with sturdy osiers stolen from the giant. Under the middle ram, we slung a man. Do you know what it's like? Dangling beneath a beast, fingers clutching filthy, matted wool that smells of grease, urine, and dung? Every muscle burns, your joints twist, and the ram's heart beats against your chest. A rhythmic, indifferent animal heart. I chose the leader, the largest. His fleece was thick as storm clouds. I gripped it with a death grip. The flock moved. Every strike of a hoof against the rocky floor echoed in my teeth. Polyphemus felt the backs. He looked for nobody on the top, but we were underneath, in the very stench of his wealth. He stopped my ram, the last one. My heart stopped. His giant palm, hot and heavy, landed on the wool directly above my face. I could see his charred socket, still oozing ichor. I could feel his breath. It smelled of my friends. "My dear ram," he whispered, and in that voice for the first time I heard not rage, but pain, the loneliness of a monster. "Why are you last today? You used to run ahead of them all. Do you grieve for your master's eye, put out by that worthless nobody? If only you could speak, you would tell me where he hides." His finger slid through the wool, nearly brushing my shoulder. One word, one breath, and he would have crushed my head like a ripe olive. But he let the beast go. We broke free. We ran for the sea, feet bloodied, dragging the sheep with us. My men on the ships wept when they saw us. They wanted to scream with joy, but I clamped their mouths shut. We loaded the spoils as silent as shadows. Every stroke of an oar against the water sounded to me like a clap of thunder. We survived. We escaped death, but we did not escape my pride. Part 8. The Price of a Name. We were far out, at a safe distance where the shore was just a dark sliver. And then something in me snapped. It wasn't bravery, it was a disease. It wasn't enough for me just to survive. It wasn't enough to escape. My eye, which I had so carefully hidden under the belly of a ram, demanded glory. I wanted that monster to know who had broken him. I wanted the world to know I was not nobody. "Hey, Cyclops," I screamed across the water. My voice was ragged, soaked in salt and poisonous defiance. "See? He wasn't so weak, the man whose friends you devoured in your hole. The immortals have exacted your debt for your lawlessness." Polyphemus roared. It wasn't the sound of a man, it was the groan of the earth itself. He ripped off the peak of a mountain. The crag flew over us, blotting out the sun, and crashed right before the ship's bow. A wave rose higher than the mast, black and cold. It hurled us back toward the very shore we had just fled. "Odysseus, stop!" my men begged. They grabbed my arms, their eyes filled with pure animal terror. "Why provoke him? He'll drown us all. Be silent." But I was drunk. Greatness had blinded me worse than the olive stake had blinded the Cyclops. I broke free. I wanted triumph. I wanted my name to enter history, even if that history was written in our blood. "Cyclops," I screamed again once we had pulled further away. "If anyone asks who put out your eye, tell them the truth. It was Odysseus, son of Laertes, lord of Ithaca." That was it. A death warrant signed by my own voice. Polyphemus raised his hands to the black sky. He didn't scream anymore. He prayed. Poseidon, my father, blue-haired lord of the seas, if I am your son, hear me. Do not let Odysseus return home. And if he is destined to see his native rocks again, let him arrive late, through years of agony, on a stranger's ship, having lost every one of his men. Let him find nothing but trouble waiting at home. The sky shuddered. I felt the wind change. It grew heavy, salty, and hostile. Poseidon had heard. Do you see me now, Alcinous? I am Odysseus, hero of Troy, the great schemer. But the truth is, I am the captain of the dead. I bought my right to sit here in your hall with the lives of all those who believed in me at Ismarus, in the land of the Lotus Eaters, and in the cave of the Cyclops. My name is not glory. It is a curse that I myself shouted over the abyss. Every mile of my journey home will now be paid for with the flesh of my friends. Every breath I take is their final exhale. Do you still want to know my name, Alcinous? Or do you fear it now as much as I do?